Picture this. You're the CEO of a world-class manufacturing giant. Metals, chemicals, heavy machinery, the kind of industry that keeps civilization running. And you're in Germany, the industrial heart of Europe, home of precision engineering and spotless efficiency. But it's 2023. You walk into your main production hall and there's silence. Not because demand collapsed, not because workers went on strike, but because you literally can't afford to flip the power switch. Welcome to the energy revolution, or what was supposed to be one. A glorious transition into a shiny green future powered by sunbeams, breezes, and moral superiority. Germany spent over $500 billion trying to build that utopia, and the result? The highest electricity prices in the developed world, a manufacturing sector bleeding out, and here's the grand punchline. They're tearing down wind turbines to expand coal mines. Yeah, you heard that right. Wind turbines replaced by coal pits. This story is a masterclass in political panic, strategic blindness, and expensive self-sabotage. Let's dive in. We're going back to 2010. The iPhone 4 just launched. People still used Facebook unironically. And in Berlin, Chancellor Angela Merkel, not just any politician, but an actual physicist, had just extended the lifespan of Germany's nuclear reactors. At the time, the country had one of the most balanced and clean energy portfolios on Earth. Nuclear contributed around 25% of electricity. It was cheap, it was steady, it was zero carbon. The long-term plan was simple: keep nuclear as the backbone while slowly scaling up renewables over many years. A sensible, gradual approach. Then came March 11th, 2011. A massive earthquake hit Japan, triggering a tsunami that damaged the Fukushima nuclear plant. It was a terrible tragedy, but it happened on the other side of the planet, in a tsunami zone, with a 40-year-old design. Germany? They don't do tsunamis. They barely do earthquakes. Logic says, review safety, strengthen backup systems, learn the lessons. Politics says, slam the panic button. Fueled by decades of anti-nuclear protests, the German public freaked out, and the physicist chancellor made a political calculation. She announced the shutdown of all nuclear power. Immediately, 8 reactors were turned off almost overnight. Imagine smashing your furnace before installing solar panels in the dead of winter and hoping good weather will save you. That's exactly what Germany did. They dismantled 17 fully paid off, fully functional, carbon-free power plants and got nothing in return except a giant hole in their energy supply. This wasn't about adding new, clean capacity. It was about replacing perfectly good, clean capacity with hopes and prayers. Energy prices surged. Consumers were hit with massive green surcharges on their bills, and when the wind and sun inevitably dipped, which they often do in Northern Europe, Germany had no nuclear to fall back on. So what did they do? They ramped up lignite coal, the absolute dirtiest fossil fuel on the planet. They shut down clean nuclear to save the planet and burned more dirt instead. It makes no sense. Now, if you shut down your reliable nuclear plants and your renewables are intermittent, you need a backup. For Germany, that backup was supposed to be natural gas. But Germany doesn't have much of its own gas. Russia does. For years, German leaders convinced themselves that if they just bought enough energy from Russia, Russia would magically turn into a friendly, peace-loving democracy. They even had a name for it: change through trade. It was a comforting story they told themselves as they built pipeline after pipeline, making their entire economy dependent on a single, unreliable supplier. They were building their house of cards on the assumption that the wind would always blow, the sun would always shine, and Russia would always be a friend. As we all know, none of those things turned out to be true. In February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, that fantasy evaporated. The gas stopped flowing. Power prices went from expensive to astronomical. That's how you end up with silent factories and CEOs wondering how to pay the bills. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was a man-made crisis, born from a decade of poor decisions. Today, Germany's industrial base is in crisis. Companies are shutting down or moving to places with cheaper energy, like the United States. The country that prided itself on its engineering prowess is now de-industrializing. And the final irony? After spending hundreds of billions on renewables, Germany's carbon emissions per person are still nearly double that of nuclear-friendly France. They spent a fortune, wrecked their industry, and didn't even achieve their climate goals. So what's the lesson here? It's that energy isn't a fairy tale. It's a game of physics and economics. You can't run a modern industrial economy on intermittent sources without a reliable, scalable, and affordable backup. Germany made a choice based on fear, not facts, and the consequences have been devastating. It's a powerful warning for any country charting its energy future. For years, Germany bet big on a steady flow of affordable energy. Major pipelines like Nord Stream 1 were built, with Nord Stream 2 on the way, to deliver cheap natural gas directly to the heart of its industry. On the surface, it looked like a fantastic deal. But by 2021, this strategy led to a critical vulnerability. Over half of Germany's natural gas came from a single source. This created a huge dependency for vital sectors like chemicals, steel, and manufacturing. Many allies warned about the risks of relying so heavily on one supplier, but those warnings felt distant. Then, in early 2022, the situation flipped overnight. The gas supply was disrupted and energy prices skyrocketed, jumping by over 1,000%. Imagine a factory's monthly energy bill soaring from 1 million euros to 10 million. No business can survive that kind of shock. Remember Germany's grand energy plan? The Energiewende? It was supposed to be a shining example for the world, but instead of leading the way, Germany seems to have stumbled into a trap of its own making. Let's start with the gas crisis. When the cheap Russian supply was cut off, the German government had to scramble, bailing out utilities with tens of billions of euros. They scoured the globe, begging for liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The irony? This new gas was far more expensive than Russian gas ever was. Germany wasn't just in trouble, it was cornered by its own decisions. To see the real-world impact, look at Ludwigshafen, home to BASF, the world's largest chemical producer. This single complex used to consume as much natural gas as the entire country of Switzerland. I say used to, because in 2023, BASF announced massive downsizing in Europe. Thousands of jobs were cut, entire plants were shut down, and their new $10 billion investment, it's not going to Germany, it's going to China, and BASF isn't alone. Miele is moving production to Poland, Volkswagen is chasing subsidies in the US and Canada, Germany's industrial icons are quietly packing their bags. Economists call this a structural adjustment. A more honest term is de-industrialization. Germany's wealth wasn't built on apps or social media, it was built on making and exporting physical things. When the factories leave, prosperity leaves with them. And here's the harsh truth. Once heavy industry abandons a region, it almost never comes back. Now for the technical side of this disaster, Germany's wind power is concentrated in the windy north. Its heavy industry, hungry for that power, is in the south. The solution seems obvious. Build massive transmission lines to connect them, but lawsuits, protests, and endless bureaucracy brought everything to a crawl. The main north-south line, called Südlink, was supposed to be ready by 2022. The new estimate? Maybe 2028. So what happens on a windy day in the north? They have more power than they can use and no way to send it south. The grid overloads. The only option is to shut down the wind farms. But, and this is the truly insane part, the operators still get paid for the power they could have produced. In 2022 alone, Germany paid over $4 billion for this ghost electricity. Meanwhile, the industrial south still needs power, so they have to fire up old coal and gas plants. German consumers end up paying twice. Once for green energy that never reaches them, and again for the fossil fuel energy that shouldn't even be necessary. Facing rising emissions from this mess, the government tried another bold move. Force homeowners to replace their gas and oil heating. This was the infamous Heating Act, which basically mandated expensive heat pumps starting in 2024. Now, heat pumps are great in modern, well-insulated homes, but most German houses are old and drafty. Installing a heat pump in one often requires new insulation, new radiators, even new flooring. The total cost could be anywhere from 20 to 50,000 euros or even more. People went ballistic. Newspapers dubbed it the heating hammer. The far right surged in the polls simply by promising, "We won't touch your boiler." The government nearly collapsed under the public backlash. Instead of speeding up the green transition, the policy triggered a panic. People rushed to install brand new gas boilers before the ban took effect, locking in fossil fuel use for another 2 decades. It was a self-inflicted wound of legendary proportions. Then, in 2023, Germany proudly announced its emissions had hit a 70-year low. A victory for the green agenda, right? Not exactly. The real reason emissions fell was because factories shut down. Industrial output dropped by around 20%. When you stop making steel, chemicals, and cement, of course, you emit less carbon dioxide. That's not success. It's economic decline disguised as climate progress. And because Germany shut down its nuclear power plants, its electricity is now far dirtier than neighboring France. A German charging an electric car can be responsible for 6 to 8 times more emissions than an EV owner in France. So where does that leave Germany today? Its economy is stagnant, its industrial core is weakening, its political system is fracturing, and the world is watching. Developing nations aren't copying Germany's model, they're actively rejecting it. They're building coal and nuclear plants, choosing reliability over ideology. Germany wanted to lead the world, but it ended up becoming a cautionary tale. Is there a way out? Maybe. Germany still has brilliant engineers and deep capital. Some are quietly whispering about restarting nuclear power, though that's a logistical nightmare. But the lesson for the rest of us is simple. Energy policy doesn't care about feelings. It cares about physics, math, and reality. If you ignore those, the bill always comes due. Germany spent $500 billion to learn that lesson.